Okay, so picture this. It's the early morning of March 18th, 1990. The city of Boston is dead quiet, still sleeping off the St. Patrick's Day parties. And inside the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, this incredible place that looks like a Venetian palace, two young security guards are just trying to make it to the end of their shift. And then, at 1:24 a.m., a buzzer just cuts through the silence.
At the employee entrance, there are two men dressed as Boston police officers. They tell the guard they're responding to a disturbance call. So the guard, a guy named Rick Abathat, does something he is absolutely not supposed to do. He breaks protocol and lets them in. A few minutes later, both guards are in handcuffs, and one of the fake cops leans in and says those chilling words. This was the start of the single biggest property theft in the history of the world.
I mean, that's how easy it was. The guards were led down to the basement, their heads were wrapped in duct tape, and they were chained to some pipes. And just like that, the thieves had total, complete control of a museum holding art worth over $500 million. The palace was all theirs. Now, if you think they just grabbed what they could and ran, you'd be wrong. This is where the story gets really, really weird. They didn't just bolt. They stayed for a bizarrely long time, and their actions during those 81 minutes have left investigators scratching their heads for more than 30 years.
81 minutes. Let that sink in for a second. A typical bank robbery is over in what, less than 3 minutes? These guys were in no rush at all. They just wander through the dark hallways like they owned the place. And we actually know where they went because the motion detectors tracked their every step, leaving behind this strange roadmap of their night.
So they went straight for the Dutch room, and they targeted some of the most famous, most priceless pieces on Earth. They took Rembrandt's one and only Seascape, an absolutely breathtaking piece of art. They also stole the concert by Vermeer. Now you gotta understand, there are only about 34 known Vermeer paintings in the entire world, and they just walked out with one. The loss of just those two paintings is, well, it's immeasurable.
But here's the part that makes art lovers physically cringe. They didn't handle these masterpieces with care. Not even close. They took out box cutters and literally sliced the canvases right out of their frames. You can just imagine it, glass smashing, priceless art being ripped away. It was a brutal, savage way to do it, and it suggests they were anything but professional art handlers.
So you're probably thinking, okay, they knew to go for the Rembrandt and the Vermeer, so they must have had a plan, right? Well, maybe. But the other things they took make absolutely no sense at all and just make the whole mystery even deeper. Their other choices were just baffling. They grabbed an ancient Chinese bronze vessel, and they spent precious time unscrewing a little bronze eagle finial off the top of a Napoleonic flag, an item worth basically nothing. And here's the real head-scratcher. They walked right past the museum's single most valuable painting, Titian's The Rape of Europa, and didn't even touch it. It just doesn't add up.
And this leads us to the central contradiction of this whole case. On one hand, these guys seem like total amateurs, using box cutters, smashing glass, damaging irreplaceable art. But on the other hand, they were disciplined professionals. They knew the police response would be slow, they stayed calm for 81 minutes, and then they completely vanished without a trace. It's what drives investigators crazy. These guys were somehow both clumsy amateurs and brilliant pros, all at the same time.
So how do you even begin to investigate a crime like this? For more than 30 years, the FBI has basically been chasing ghosts. There were no fingerprints, no DNA, and the art has never, ever surfaced on any market. But out of thousands of leads, the investigation has really boiled down to three main theories. These are the three main paths the FBI has gone down again and again. First, that it was a hit by a local Boston mob crew. Second, a strange connection to a gangster out in Connecticut. And third, maybe the most disturbing theory of all, that it was an inside job. Okay, so theory number one, the Boston mob. The focus landed on the Trapani crew, who were rivals of the infamous Whitey Bulger. One of their guys, George Reesfelder, looked a lot like one of the police sketches. And after he died, his sister-in-law even claimed she once saw him with a painting that looked just like the stolen Monet. It's a compelling lead for sure, but it's all circumstantial. But the strongest lead for years has always pointed to Robert Gentile, a gangster from Connecticut. Get this, the FBI raided his home and found a handwritten list of all the stolen art with its estimated black market value next to each piece. They offered him millions, they offered him immunity, but he went to his grave in 2021 insisting he knew nothing. But what if the thieves didn't just get lucky? What if they had help from the one person who is supposed to stop them? This brings us to the most debated and maybe the most troubling theory of all. We have to go back to Rick Abath, the guard who let them in, because his actions that night are just incredibly suspicious. He broke protocol by opening the main door. Motion sensors show he also opened a side door for a moment right before the thieves arrived. Was he giving a signal? And his movements line up with the only unexplained motion sensor pings during the entire heist. Now, he has always maintained his innocence, and he was never charged with anything. So after 3 decades of dead ends, the art is still gone. But the legacy of this crime isn't just some dusty old cold case file. It's a real, physical, and kind of haunting presence you can still see and feel inside the museum today.
I mean, the scale of this is just staggering. 13 pieces of art, gone. Today, they're valued at over $500 million, and there's a $10 million reward on the table, no questions asked, for any information that leads to getting them back. And yet, still nothing but silence.
Now, to understand what makes this story so unique, you have to know about the museum's founder, Isabella Stewart Gardner herself. She put a very specific, very strict rule in her will. It said that nothing in her collection could ever be permanently moved, sold, or even rearranged. If it was, the entire collection had to be dismantled and sold off.
So, faced with this rule, the museum made a really powerful and poignant decision. They couldn't put up replicas, and they couldn't move other art into the gaps, so they just left the original, empty frames hanging exactly where they were on the walls. When you walk into the Dutch room today, you see these gorgeous, ornate frames surrounding nothing but a patch of floral wallpaper. They really are like ghosts. They're placeholders for all that beauty that just vanished into the night. A constant, silent memorial to what was taken from all of us. So after all these years, the ultimate question still hangs in the air. Where are they? Are these masterpieces sitting in a climate-controlled private vault somewhere? Are they rotting away in a damp basement? Or were they destroyed decades ago because they were simply too famous, too hot to ever sell? Until we know, those empty frames will hang there, just waiting.